Hey, beautiful soul. You're listening to the Rising into Mindful Motherhood podcast, your weekly dose of fertility wisdom. I'm your host, Dr. Katie Wood. I'm a barefoot mama bear, pharmacist, and integrative fertility coach. This is your go-to podcast for all things to naturally nourish your fertility, embody womb healing, and reclaim your feminine power to accelerate your path to pregnancy. My expert guests and I will be having intentional conversations to discuss the many facets of a thriving, fertile foundation, natural wellness, and how we grow and transform as women on our journey to motherhood. So let's dive in, shall we? Hello and welcome to Rising into Mindful Motherhood. I am super excited to dive in with you in this episode and really talk about how normal labs don't actually mean that everything is quote unquote normal or even optimal for fertility, and how that could be potentially hindering your ability to get pregnant because your doctor is telling you that everything looks normal, so maybe they're pushing you on to fertility treatments like Clomid, Letrozole, IUI, or even IVF, when realistically, there is something going on underneath. And I have a very specific example that I'm going to talk about today, and it's actually one of my clients, and I shared a post about it on Instagram, and I just think it is a beautiful representation of how maybe some serum labs that you got in a very specific point of time, right? It's just a snapshot of that one day that you got those labs drawn. It's not the end all be all. So I hear from so many women in my DMs that, oh, my labs came back normal, my tests came back normal, but yet they've been trying to conceive for 3 years or longer, and they've tried and failed IUIs. Maybe they've even tried and failed IVF, even ovulation stimulating medications, just all the things. And sometimes people are even being pushed into donor eggs or like a surrogate. And it's kind of like, okay, let's dive a little bit deeper, but unfortunately, your doctor is not going to do that with you. So that is where working with a fertility expert, a holistic and integrative fertility expert, someone who's going to look at the whole body. And I will say I had gotten off of a fertility strategy session with a couple yesterday, and they told me that I am the first person that they have spoken to about their fertility struggles who actually considered their whole body, like their whole scenario, mind, body, spirit, and not just saying, oh, you've been trying to conceive for this long. We'll take some labs, see if we find anything. But really, your only option is IUI or IVF. Like, it's wild. So I'm going to actually share my screen because I know that this is a video podcast. Okay. So you should be able to see that, and you can go to this post on Instagram as well. But I talk about why the surface level labs your doctor is ordering is actually costing you your fertility, right? It's costing you time. It's costing you time. And if whatever is going on underneath never gets addressed and resolved, then potentially, even if you do countless rounds of IVF, spending all that money, all that time, all that energy, and you might not even come out on the other side with a child. And that to me is just not okay. We should be doing everything we possibly can to help you figure out why you're not conceiving before you go on to fertility treatments. Unless there is a genetic or an anatomical issue that is known, I do not see why IVF is necessary, or if you're a solo parent by choice, right? There are certain circumstances where you do need IVF, but if you are a couple and you don't know of any genetic or anatomical issues and you're not being able to get pregnant and you're being pushed to doing IVF treatment or some other fertility treatment without actually figuring out what's going on, then you're being gaslighted, you're being dismissed and just shrugged off. And I just hear it time and time again from so many people that I talk to. Okay. So let's take a look at this. So she had cycle day 3 labs drawn. So this is on the third day of her period. That's cycle day 3. These are actually labs that I had drawn for her, but these are typical labs that possibly your OB, even your regular doctor or a fertility specialist would order for you as well. And by looking at it, honestly, these labs are picture perfect. So, for example, we like to see estradiol anywhere between 30 to 50. I'm not going to get into units, but the units are on the image there. 30 to 50, and she's at 42.6, so great. Luteinizing hormone, we like that to be under 7 and in a 1-to-1 ratio with FSH. She's at a 6, and her follicle stimulating hormone is at a 6.3. So they are pretty darn close to being at a 1-to-1 ratio. So looking at this, I told her, okay, great. Those cycle day 3 labs looked amazing. But here's the question, and a lot of this can sometimes be dismissed by your doctor, is she has been ovulating late for quite some time now, and she has experienced 2 miscarriages within the last year or so, and she's ovulating between days 18 and 22. So if your cycle day 3 labs look so good, why is this happening? So this is where one of the tests that I run with my clients in my one-on-one program, this is called the Dutch test, one of the many ones that they have. And this is what we're seeing. So she is actually not getting her peak estrogen until about cycle day 20, cycle day 21. That's pretty late. And if you look here, her estradiol is just pretty darn low. And you can see that she is ovulating because she does have the increase in progesterone, but it's not a super steady and stable rise in progesterone. And of course, that is happening later in the cycle as well because she's ovulating later. And then we get to one of the fun parts in her Dutch test. And this is not the entire Dutch test. There were other things as well. So some other things that came up was her cortisol was not in a really great place. She had not an ideal cortisol awakening response. Her cortisol was increasing in the afternoon and also before bedtime as well. So that can cause hormonal issues. And then looking at her estrogen here, so her estrogen's super low, estradiol, the dial is showing low, which is what we saw in the cycle mapping. And her body is pushing everything down to this estriol or E3, which is one of the weakest estrogens in the body. This is actually the estrogen that's most prevalent in pregnancy, not meaning that she's pregnant, but her body is preferring this. But since it's the weakest estrogen and it's not the estrogen that plays a role in ovulation, that is potentially one factor of poor egg quality and a delayed ovulation. And then looking down here, there's a few different metabolism pathways for estrogen, and her body is pretty much only utilizing one, this 16-OHE1 pathway, and you don't have to understand any of this, but this is one of the most inflammatory pathways, along with the 4-OHE1. And the pathway that we do want her to be using, the 2-OHE1 down here, she's not utilizing that at all. So something is going on in her body because both of these, the estriol and the 16-OHE1, those are CYP3A4 pathways, which is a liver enzyme. So there could be something in her environment, in her diet, a supplement, a medication. It could be a condition that she has in her body that could be upregulating this pathway that's affecting her estrogen, but then also with the estrogen being metabolized down this one specific pathway, that can cause other issues in the body as well. So all of this would be completely missed if we just based our clinical decisions on the cycle day 3 hormones that I showed in the very beginning. And I just break that down here. So what I'm able to help her with by supporting her estrogen, we're going to use targeted supplements, herbs, of course, lifestyle and nutrition. And that's to get her estradiol in a healthier range, which is going to help with a healthier and more optimal ovulation, while also supporting her metabolism and her detox, because that is very important as well for her estrogen. And all of this is going to support healthy egg quality and an optimal ovulation. And like I had mentioned, this deep dive is never going to happen at your doctor's office. And just to kind of, I'm going to stop sharing here. To share another example from the same client, before we began working together, she was actually treated for group B strep as a vaginal infection. And that was probably months before we started working together. Months later, we did a vaginal microbiome test. And what that test showed was that the group B strep was still present in her vaginal microbiome, and it was also present in a urine analysis. So another thing that the test showed is that was the only microbe available. There was nothing else available. There was no lactobacillus, which is one of the species that we would want to see in a vaginal microbiome. And likely the doctor wasn't aware of that based on the type of specific test that they used. And now that we see that, hey, it's still there, they gave her antibiotics, but it didn't work. I'm able to give her a different, more robust, personalized protocol to help get her vaginal flora more balanced, because the flora of your vaginal microbiome can actually have an impact on your fertility and also on the health of your pregnancy and miscarriage risk. And it's just another way that unfortunately Western medicine just takes things only like one step deep, like on the surface level, when you're working with someone who is aware of the body as a whole and root cause healing and what that even means and what that looks like. Then you're able to go layers deeper and actually figure out, not only address it and bring things back into balance, but figure out, how did this imbalance occur to begin with, the root cause, and be able to fix that and address that in an ideal manner. Like I said, if she has something in her environment or her diet or maybe medication that is influencing her estrogen in this negative way, if ideally it's something that we're going to be able to remove and then adjust and bring her body back into balance. So I wanted to share this because I hear so many times when people are just being shuffled along in this like line, this just fertility line of, oh, check, check, check. Like, you tried for a year, we did these tests, couldn't find anything. Like, your only option is this. And it's upsetting and frustrating. And I just want you to know that if you have been told you have unexplained infertility, everything looks normal, they can't tell you why you haven't been able to get pregnant, and they're just ushering you to doing IVF or whatever it may be, and that doesn't feel right to you, then please reach out to me on Instagram. I am more than happy to have a conversation with you about what your journey has looked like, what you've tried, tests you've had done, and just trying to see, is there something that I feel that has been missed? Do I feel like I can help you? Can I point you in the best direction? So shoot me a message on Instagram at the _wellness_pharmacist. The link is in the show notes. And you can just let me know that you listen to this podcast. And I'm more than happy to help guide you in the best direction possible, and at least let you just share your journey and listen and be there for you. So thank you so much for listening, and I will see you on the next episode. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Rising into Mindful Motherhood podcast. If this episode resonated with you or gave you an aha moment, stop what you're doing right now and write a review. This simple act of kindness helps me get this podcast out to connect with as many women as I possibly can. I also have a special offer. If you send me a screenshot of your review, I will take $250 off one of my premium coaching containers. Let me know what resonated with you the most and why. So connect with me in my free Facebook community or tag me on Instagram. You'll find both listed below. Thanks again from the bottom of my heart for tuning in to this episode, and I'll see you next time.